Deserve a gold star for coming to hear about Alzheimer's, my journey with Jim. And yeah, you make a big good. Actually, I'll wait till Eileen is going to interview me a little later on, but you do deserve a gold star because I'm going to be talking about Alzheimer's and also about death and how death can be really an opportunity for us to talk about it, and it can be healing, which is what we found. So for the people who are new here, how many of us are residents of Brightview? Would you hold your hands up, hold them up high so people can turn around and look to see who's here? And are there any Brightview staff that are here? All right. Thank you. And my family and Jim's family. So my family, my 3 kids, and my granddaughter is going to be here, I understand. There you are back there. Okay. So if you would raise your hands, my kids, is Katie?
Yep, back here.
Okay. And Jim's family, did you have your hands up in the air? Oh, all right, great. Some of you know me, and some of you don't. Jim and I moved here in 2018. I'm hearing pops. Okay. So we moved here in 2018, and Eileen was our person in chief of showing us around and making sure that we liked what we saw. And so we moved in 2018 in September, and we lived in independent living for a year. And during that year, our doctor suggested that Jim go for cognitive testing, retesting, because he had been tested as mild cognitive impairment. And then when we went for retesting, Jim had been in Andover Senior Center in a day program 2 days a week. He did not like it. And I got a call from them saying, we're going to have to ask you to move Jim. He needs too much care. We can no longer care for him. So we came to, we were already here. That was one of the reasons that we chose Brightview, was because it had independent and assisted, which I have moved into like 6 months ago, and memory care. So it was like, if we ever need it, it'll be nice to have it. So then this psychiatrist said, Jim has really diminished capacity. And if he were in memory care, it would make it much easier on that diminished capacity. So my kids and I made the difficult decision to move Jim to memory care. One of the things that happened when Jim got into memory care was that I took notes every day. I had my notebook with me, and as my habit was, no matter where I went, I took my notebook and my pen. And Jim, sometimes he would talk so much that I'd put my phone on to try to keep up with him. Other times I just took the notes. And then I posted some on Facebook quite often, but not every day. And it was kind of like, this was the good, the really difficult part of dementia world today. And I would say something. So I had all those notes and all those Facebook posts. And I want to tell you just a couple of serendipity things that happened that were just so wonderful. So a month after Jim went into memory care, a friend of mine who's a hospice chaplain out on the West Coast suggested in a Facebook post that people who were dealing with grief, it could be really helpful for them to write. And if anybody wanted a journal, she would send them a journal. And I thought, oh, how nice is that? However, how many journals have I started? Many. But I never kept up with it. And I thought, well, maybe this time. When her journal arrived, she had written a haiku blessing for Mary's journal. And I had to look up on Google what haiku was. I knew, but I didn't know. So I found out that haiku is a 3-line poem, unrhymed, and has 17 syllables in the 3 lines. So not words, syllables. And this was Nancy's haiku blessing for me. So 5. May this be holy. 7. May these writings be sacred. 5. May you find healing. And it was those last 5 syllables that just did me in. I cried, I think, for days. It was so meaningful. And so I thought, well, maybe I can write a haiku. And I started waking up counting syllables. I think of a sentence or I think of a phrase, and it was like, how can I fit this in? It was really, really remarkable. And then, shortly after that, I had a friend who is a Reiki master, and she gave me a Reiki session. And it was like after that session, haiku just started pouring out of me. It was like so amazing. I had no idea that that was going to be happening. The other serendipity thing, and I've got probably close to 100 of them in my book. It was a way for me to pour out my angst, my sadness, my anger, my everything that was going on. So that was one serendipity thing. Another was that I was on a Zoom call and we were talking about end-of-life issues. And at the end of the Zoom call, I said, I have a question that I'd like to ask folks. I'm thinking about writing a book about my husband's Alzheimer's journey. And I wonder if anybody here has any experience with self-publishing. Well, I didn't even know what self-publishing meant, but I had heard the words, and this woman came on and said, I know a lot about self-publishing, and I'd be glad to talk with you. So I got her phone number, and I called her the next day, and she was very helpful, very interesting, and I thought, well, that was really nice. And then a couple of weeks later, this woman's name was Nancy. Nancy called me and said, Mary, I've been thinking about this book that you're thinking about writing about Jim and his journey. I'd really like to support you, and I wonder if you're interested. Well, I didn't know what support meant, but it was like I can use any support I can get. And all these notes that I had taken in my notebook and stuff that I had posted on Facebook, I copied out of Facebook and put those notes into a Microsoft Word document. And then I had all other stuff that I hadn't posted on Facebook. And I decided, well, maybe I'll just copy them all and paste them into a Word document. And I had 89 pages. of notes. And I printed them off and read them, and it was like, this is not what I had in mind. I don't know what I had in mind, but this is not it. So anyway, Nancy said to me, I wonder, I have a good friend that lives in Ohio that is really good at helping people bring stuff together. Would it be okay if I gave her your contact information? And it was like, yeah. So Kim called me from Ohio, and the two of them, this wouldn't have happened without the two of them. They are my editors. One I should mention, I've seen this picture. My niece took this picture the first month that we lived here at Brightview. Very special. Okay. So, I put on your chairs the chapters that are in my book, and I'm going to start with Memory Care Begins. So my kids and I made the decision and moved Jim to memory care. One of my first haiku. You in memory care? I don't think I can do that. I'll feel too guilty. September 1, 2019. We moved Jim to memory care in the senior housing where we were living. The memory care staff were wonderful, but the move was awful. Like horrible. The last can't get worse kind of awful. A few weeks after Jim moved in, we visited him, and he said, I just got to get out of here. It's not fun. I'm going to spend 10, 20, 30 here. I want to talk with my son to see if he can help me. I need to do something worthwhile, and it sure isn't here. Doesn't have anything to do with you talking to me, but you're the person that made me come here. We had breakfast together every morning. One morning, but the same as all the others, Jim said, my life is over. Get some of the money that we have so I can get out of here. We spent some time with other residents that day on a couple of activities. Jim was not interested. When I left after lunch, Jim told me, you don't need to come back. It just reminds me that you're not here with me. Don't expect anything good from me. I'm done. I need something to connect with people. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm in a bad mood. Why can't I be with you? Are you seeing someone else? Don't bother coming back. I don't mean that. It's a simple thing. Why can't I just be with you? Every night I cry when I go to bed. It's a rotten thing you've done to me. You just killed me. You throw me away like nothing. You can leave now. And you don't need to come back. Just go. My life is over. You've ruined my life. This is not the Jim I know. When I left, an aide who was coming down the hall to check on, I asked her if she would check on Jim. She asked him if he would like some ice cream. And he said, sure. I was so relieved. Ice cream fixes most everything. This is the Jim, I know. He doesn't want anybody to visit. I'm not in the mood for people. My daughter's okay, but you get all the good stuff and I get crap. I'm stuck here. There's nothing here for me. Why are you throwing me out? Feeling bottled up. Tender words I want to say get stuck in my throat. So that was the beginning of memory care. As I said, the staff was wonderful, but Jim was having none of it. Goodness, the first month is over. Whew. I must remember that this is not just Jim talking. It's the dementia talking. Easier to say than to remember when he's repeating words like, I'd rather die than be here. Or, what did I do that you hate me so much? He seemingly can't control his emotions or what he says. Jim had always been a very patient person, and that is something I learned from him over the years. I surely needed that patience now, and I put it to good use. Thank you, Jim. So after that beginning, I realized how important it was that I take care of myself. And so I knew I needed support, and I didn't know where to find it. And so I Googled support systems Alzheimer's, support systems Merrimack Valley, support systems husband, just on and on. And by that time I wasn't driving any longer, and everything was either by Zoom or by telephone. And it was like, this is not going to work all that well, but honestly, those support systems were my lifesaver. And I also had a geriatric social worker that Jim and I had met with, and I can't even remember when, but somewhere along the way, we had met with her, and she stayed with me, bless her heart, Elizabeth. She was wonderful. She just was so affirmed me, you're doing all the right things, and she was just really great. So I really appreciated Elizabeth. I also, and I've got some of the things back here, caring for myself was really important. And so some of the reason that Brightview made it so great was that they had art classes and Zen-Tangle classes. And so I've got some of these up here that while I was doing Zen-Tangle, I wasn't thinking about Jim. It was like you had to draw this line and follow this pattern. And it was such a relief to be able to step back from all of that. And then one of the things also, I started doing loving kindness meditation, and I used this book, The Mindful Path of Self-Compassion. And I adapted a mindfulness meditation. And it was like, I am loving kindness. And there are lots of times that Jim would do something and I'd be rolling my eyes, or I'd get mad at him for whatever. And it was like, I am loving kindness in my looking. I am loving kindness in my hearing. I am loving kindness in my words. I am loving kindness. I am loving kindness to Jim. And I am loving kindness to myself. And I can remember one time I had my fob in my hand and I was living on the 3rd floor at the time. So I could go right into memory care. And I often would say this loving kindness thing like first thing in the morning, but I remember one morning that I had my head against the door and a fob in hand. I am loving kindness. I am loving kindness to Jim. And so I repeated the phrases over and over. And then, I guess I felt like I was ready and I put my fob in and unlocked the door and went in to see what that day was going to be like. So loving kindness meditation was really helpful. We also had one of the women who was one of my support group leaders. She was in the Merrimack Valley, and she was also a hospice chaplain. And she gave us this 4 lines. Let me see if I find it here. And I used to wrap these lines around me like a warm blanket when I needed some comfort. Peace to the past and peace to the present. Peace to the tears. And of course, by this time, I was bawling. Peace to those tears. It was a hard one. I didn't want peace to those tears, but I would say it. Peace to the tears and peace to the laughter. Peace to the memories and all they hold. Peace to the future and whatever it may bring. Peace today. So it was a way of trying to regulate myself, I guess, as I tried to care for Jim. Caring for myself was so important. Exhaustion can take over and totally overwhelm every aspect of life. Thinking, concentration for sure, remembering, finances, getting out of bed, and on and on. Even though it's easier said than done, I'm glad that I was living in a senior residence that made taking breaks for creative activities possible. And I'm glad that I made caring for myself a priority. And my kids, they took such good care of me. I am so grateful. Can't rush the process of a flower unfolding. Don't rip me open. So those were the first 2 chapters. I'm going to ask Eileen if she's agreed to interview me a little bit, ask me some questions. So I don't know how we'll do this. So yeah, maybe you could just stand here.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm honored to be here with Mary. Like she said, we've been stuck together for a couple of years now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. What a wonderful family she has. So I have a few questions here. Mary, what's the most important message you want to convey here today?
Well, I think with the book in general, that as a care partner, how hard it is, and I want people to know if they're caring for someone that they love, that they're not alone.
What kind of challenges did you face while writing your book?
I had a lot of challenges. probably my biggest one was that I didn't want to make Jim look bad. And I had, is it not? Okay. And I just kind of had to get over myself. So the editors that I had, I was working with them, and it was like, I don't know if I can write that or not. I don't want his family to feel bad. And I don't want people that are in his churches that know where he is to feel bad. And so it was a while getting over, and my editor said to me, Mary, you said all along that you wanted to be emotionally honest in your book. This is emotional honesty. So you don't have to put it in if you don't want, but you could write it and then take it out if you don't like it once you get toward the end. So that was a hard thing.
Tell us about the title of the book, and did you have other titles in mind?
Well, the title of the book happened. Jim was, actually, this was very close to his death. And he was sitting outside his room on a bench. And he was all hunched over. His eyes were closed. He was wearing his favorite blue sweater. And he didn't know who I was, and so every time I would say, "Hi, Jim, it's Mary." And this time I said, "May I sit with you for a while?" He didn't respond. So I sat down and I put my hand on his leg, and we sat there for a while. And then he said, "You make a big good." And that's Alzheimer's speak, I guess, for "I'm really glad you're here," or something similar to that. And I did have another title that I thought about. This, Jim had said, I don't know what had happened this day that he said this. It wasn't anything that I had done or that I knew anybody else had done, but he was sitting there and he said, Today really joyed me. And I said, "Oh, Jim, I love it when you're joyed. You joyed me today too, Jim." And so that was, "Today really joyed me" was also another title that I had thought of for the book. But I don't know, there was an emotional tug to this one that was like, use this. So, again, I got it for myself.
Okay, I have 2 questions left. What was the easiest and hardest chapter to write?
It was all darn hard. But there were some chapters that were hard. Probably the easiest chapter was sweet moments, tender moments, sacred moments, different things that Jim happened along the way. And I think the hardest one was that Memory Care Begins. That was so brutal, just brutal. But we had a lot of people here that made it wonderful. And I see Angelica sitting back. Jim you were one of Jim's favorite people. Yeah. She'd come in and say, "Jim, I need you. Can you come help me?" And Jim would follow her anywhere. One of the things that we did also when we first moved in, Jim just needed to be useful. And so I talked with the staff and said, "Is there any way that you can think about that you might have something that Jim could do that he'd feel useful. And they came up with two things. One was calling bingo. So Jim couldn't read by then, but the staff member would call the number 072 or whatever, and Jim would repeat 072. And that just seemed like such a simple thing, but it really made a difference for him. He felt useful. And another thing that they did was, or suggested, was that the whiteboard that we used every day to say what the activities were going to be, his job was to erase the whiteboard. And as simple as that seems, that also was really very important to him, made him feel useful. There we go.
Okay, so my last question to all you, to Mary, what is the message that you would relate to all of us, not knowing what everyone's going through on a daily basis, the fights that we struggle with, how our days go by? What is the message you would share with all of us?
It's possible to make it through. And that there are people around who care about us, care about you, and yeah, we can make it through. We can do this hard thing. We can. Thank you, Riley. Now, if we can do this without, is it okay? Can people hear? I was recently asked if I would think about what is joy in dementia. What is meaning making in dementia? And it was really helpful for me to stop and think about, how do you find joy? And how do you find meaning? And one of the things that Jim did was, or that Brightview did up in Wellspring Village, the staff, every time there was a special event, a holiday or something, they would have a party. And so in Halloween, I remember one year Jim had long black hair on and a witch hat. And when he saw that picture, he said, "That guy needs a haircut." And there were just so many. Cinco de Mayo with the sombreros and the wonderful music. It was really remarkable how much joy there was. And we talked about the meaning as well. So, yeah. So I'd like to read something more from the chapter, Sacred Sweet Moments. I don't know that this is going to work. Let's see. You can hear? All right. Sweet moments, tender moments, sacred moments. Oh, thanks, Jeff. My kids, they take good care of me. Jim often waves to the man across the street, himself in the bathroom mirror. And I asked him today if he'd like to talk to this man, and he replied, "Sure." And we walked down to the bathroom, and he said, "Every time I come here, you come out to see me. It's really wonderful to have someone who's a friend." Another day, Jim looks at himself in the mirror and says, is that me? And I said, yeah, it's you, Jim. Pretty nice, huh? And he remarked, he's doing all right. And then to himself in the mirror, it's really nice to be with you. And then to me, he said, he is always here. I like him. He's nice. Today we listened to lots of music, which Jim really enjoyed. A Louis Armstrong song came on, and he recognized the voice. And I reminded him that he wanted It's a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong at his funeral. I also told him that at his funeral, as people left the service, he wanted a Dixieland version of When the Saints Go Marching In. And his reply was, that's good. Let people have some fun at a sad time. After lunch today, Jim said, oh, I said, you had 2 dishes of ice cream today. And he said, it was very good. It was icing. Do you need to go now? And I said, where do you want to go? He said, good question. Who are you? I'm Mary. Who's she? I'm your wife, I said. Are you here now? Yes, I'm right here, Jim. And I held his hand. It must be so hard to be so confused so much of the time. Bless him. A few weeks before Jim's death, a memory care resident, John, fed his ice cream to Jim. John's hand was very shaky as he fed Jim each bite. But Jim didn't notice. John just kept feeding him until the ice cream was gone. This is so very special. And John was such a special man. He'd walk in the room and his smile just lit up the room. I love this man. And then I told you about the You Make a Big Good, sitting outside his room and sitting down beside him and him not knowing who I was, but was together enough. I think he knew I was an okay person, and he liked me. But a relationship with him, it was no longer there. And he said, you make a big good. And it's like, you make a big good. Tender words Jim said to me, sheltered in my heart. Wow. A few days before Jim's death, our granddaughter visited. Jim had been unresponsive that day, but he had been resting fairly comfortably. His eyes were closed. She sat by Jim, facing him, and said, Grandpa T, I have some very good news, and I want you to be the first person I tell this to. I'm going to have a baby. And would you believe it? Jim gave her a thumbs up. I'm so glad that he heard her. and responded. And Grandpa T would have loved that little girl, Addie, that she was carrying. A day later, our grandson sat facing Jim and then stood up. And though Jim wasn't at all responsive that day, Maggie said, Grandpa T, I want you to be the first person I show this to. And he lifted his shirt and exposed a tattoo that went from his armpit to his waist. And Matthew said, Grandpa T, this is a tattoo of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. Massachusetts for the state where I was born, and New Hampshire for the place you and I went hiking so many times in the White Mountains with my dad. And Maine for where I went to college and where I started my career. He showed that tattoo to Grandpa T first. Wasn't that just the sweetest? Our grandson's father, our son Steve, said, smart move to show that to Grandpa T first, so your mother wouldn't yell at you. These precious moments and beautiful memories I will remember. And a sacred moment, I wanted to do something special for Jim on his anniversary, on our anniversary. And I always wondered, will this be our last anniversary? Last birthday, last Christmas, I did the whole shebang. And this one did happen to be our last anniversary. But we talked about our picture at breakfast, and he said, we did pretty good. How long? 63 years. I don't think so. The thing that would be better is we could be together. So I had asked Julie if she would make some anointing oil for Jim. And after we talked about our wedding, most of which he did not remember, I asked Jim if I could put some oil on his forehead. And he agreed. And I put the oil on my fingers, and then I put my fingers on his forehead and say, Jim, may we be safe. Jim, may we know that we are loved. Then Jim continued, I have something to add, he said. We have lots of feelings and hopes. Amen. Did I mention that Jim was a pastor? He remembered that part. We have lots of feelings and hopes. I said, we do have good memories, Jim. I was crying by then, but Jim said, just one more. I hope it stays that way for a long time. We toasted each other with cinnamon coffee cake, which someone had sent to Jim for a snack. Poignant and sweet and tender and beautiful and sacred and difficult. This is what I want, to create moments of joy for my beloved.
was helpful, creating moments of joy. And so that was really, really helpful.
As part of our journey. I need somebody to hold this for me. Help me out. Oops. Thank you. Jim fell 3 times today. Awful, long goodbye. Creates climate of distress, unrelenting ache. Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. Jim died this morning. When Jim's breath left him, he closed the door quietly, and then he was gone. Jim's death was expected. Yes, it was expected in a way, I guess, but it was also unreal at the same time. Jim's actual last breath was quiet. I wasn't sure that it was his last breath. I wasn't sure he was gone, and I didn't want this to have happened yet. I assume I was in a fog of feelings. I sat with my family in the quiet for a long time. I wasn't thinking, just being there and being with Jim's body and with each other and trying to absorb the enormity of what had just happened. I don't remember that we talked much during this time. I think the quietness was healing in a way for me. I hadn't considered what to do after Jim's last breath, so that meant I hadn't talked with my kids about it either. It seems now that would have been helpful for us as a family to discuss what to do after his last breath. I wish we had, but that's hindsight. I encourage you, the reader, to imagine or to plan for what you might wish to do after your loved one's death, difficult as that may be. We sat there quietly as we adjusted to this new reality. In a way, perhaps this allowed Jim to adjust to his new reality as well, as he left his body and this physical world. During this time, I wasn't consciously thinking about Jim's journey or our journey as a family without him. Inevitable that death comes to all of us. Be present. Take time. Sunset of good life. Lover of family and friends. Bask in the afterglow. Thank you, Jim, for being in my life. I wasn't sure that I was going to read this, but all the support groups that I had, I also continued them after Jim died. So I was in 2 different bereavement groups. And one of the group leaders suggested that we write a letter to our loved one about our experience of their last breath or their last hours. And when we had finished that, it was like I was to write a letter back to myself from Jim. And I remember saying to her, I don't know about that. It's if I write to myself from myself, I'm just going to be talking to myself. And she said, maybe. So, this is my letter to Jim, 7 months after he died. And I am shortening it some because I went on and on. Dear Jim, I am writing to tell you about my experience of the last hours before your death. Words are inadequate. I remember sitting by you and feeling remarkably calm. I'm sure I told you it was okay for you to go and that I'll miss you so much and the kids will miss you so much, but we'll be okay. I have tears in my eyes as I remember this. Our kids and my grandson and Jim's sisters soon came, and we took turns sitting by your bed facing you and talking with you and just being quiet and holding your hand. Were you aware that we were there with you? Did you hear us? I hope so. Jim, just after your last breath, while your body was still warm, I remember kissing your face all over, your eyelids, your cheeks, your forehead, your ears, and back to your lips. I didn't want to believe this would be the last time I would be able to kiss you and feel your warmth. I didn't want to let you go. You had seemed at peace as you drew your last breath. That is still comforting to me. All my love, Mary. P.S. Jim, I'm reminded of the song by Carole King that you often played when you were a DJ for youth dances. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. Jim, that is still reassuring to me that you will be there. Yes, you will. And my letter back from Jim. Dear Mary, thank you for your letter. My soul is warmed. I can't describe what it was like for me exactly in those last hours, but I did feel your love. Love from all of you. It was both hard and not hard to leave you behind. I felt peaceful. You are all so important to me, and I know I can watch over you always. I am happy. All is well. There is so much to tell you, and I want to say more to make you feel comfortable, but words are difficult for me. I know I will always want to take care of you and my family, and I always will. I love you, Jim. P.S. You make a big good. This is our story. This is one story. It's the story of Jim's 2.5 years in memory care, drawn from my daily notes. Although I didn't take notes so that I could write a book, maybe this book wanted to be written before I knew it myself. The dialogue is authentic, making Jim and me co-authors. It's a journey of darkness and light, where moments of devastation alternate with glimpses of Jim's real self. While your experience as a care partner may differ from mine, know that you are not alone in questioning yourself or in feeling heartbreak, confusion, and doubt. As you care for your loved one and yourself, may these pages offer comfort and companionship on your journey. You do not walk alone. I need some water.
We'll have a few minutes for if anybody has any questions that they want to ask me or the kids. I think Carla is going to start us off.
I had never met anyone with Alzheimer's in my entire life until I met Jim. And the thing that was interesting to me was when Mary said, "Will you pass me your plate?" And he gave her his fork. And I'm like, you know, it was such an awakening for me to have that experience. What Mary has written, I wonder in 1,000 years if I could ever write anything so beautifully stated, or the way that she is so truthful and expresses every feeling that you could possibly have. I enjoyed the book. I'd like to say I cried a lot, but when my sister died, I think I used all of my tears. It's hard for me to cry. But it's interesting that you don't go through this book alone. You go through this book with Jim and Mary at your side. And the thing is when you are reading it, there are so many things that she gives you as far as what to do, how to do it, and how to move forward. And I'm learning how to do those things. When we had our writing group, it was interesting that we sat down together, and I would tell Lynn, I'm going to our writing group. Everybody knew in the group that we were going to a dementia group. Lynn didn't know that. But anyway, he does now. But it was interesting because Mary could write a haiku, with the syllables, and it would take me 25 paragraphs to say the same thing. I was always the last one done writing, but she was able to say something more meaningful a lot of times, more succinctly a lot of times, and also heartwarming and touching. She touched my heart in many ways with our writing. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is when something happens with my husband, Lynn, I try and write it down so then I know to talk to the doctor about it and to be ready for the next thing. And how does that moment grow into a regular daily situation? Those are the things that I've learned, the kindly expressions. I need to learn that as well as Mary has, because I need to think about, keeping my patience, not getting mad. All of the things that Mary has said in this book were ways for me to grow my own life and to help Lynn in the best way I could. It's a wonderful book.
Carla mentioned the group that met here, so it was the only in-person support group that I had. And there were 4 women, and we met once a week. And we'd write, and then we'd read what we had written. This was one of the things that I wrote. So it's an acrostic. So I took the words Alzheimer's and put it down the left side of the page, A-L-Z, blah, blah, blah. So, here we go. Alzheimer's, you suck. L. Let me tell you, you've ruined and interrupted so many people's lives, including mine. Z, 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 Z. Sometimes all I want to do is sleep. H. Hoping to wake up to a new reality without you, Alzheimer's. Everything in every day is colored by your presence, and it's not in good and beautiful ways. I do have some choice about my response to you, though. My voice doesn't need to be silenced. I can educate and be an advocate for care partners and for people with Alzheimer's. Our rest. Renew. Taking care of myself is a priority. If I don't do that, I will deplete myself and be no good to myself or to Jim. Yes. So, how will I continue to use my voice? How will I continue to support Jim through his confusion and his continuing struggle with Alzheimer's? How will I continue to educate myself and share what I learn? I haven't made peace with you yet, Alzheimer's, but I commit myself to continuing to work on it. So that group was really an important group to me. So before we leave to get some refreshments that Brightview has prepared for us, anybody have questions that you would like to ask me? No pressure. Yes.
I'm very thankful because Mary shared her book of haiku with me, and I don't know how she did it. They're beautiful.
Thank you. I wrote lots of haiku. I started with Alzheimer's Love haiku, and then there was Alzheimer's Grief haiku, COVID-19 haiku, End of Life haiku. I did that. I thought I was done, and then after the 5th month, I wasn't done. I did haiku part 2. So haiku has just come to be a really important part of my life, but thank you, Ollie. Anybody else have a question or?
Mary and Julie shared something really amazing and awesome with me earlier today, and I think you should share with everyone else.
Jim donated his body for medical education. And I remember calling Boston University. It was like, oh my God, he's not here. I better call them and, let them know. So these are Jim's ashes that are blown into this glass flame. So I was one of my support groups. a woman who was having a very, very difficult time because her father had died and she was very close to him. And she brought this paperweight that had her father's ashes in it. And she just said, "He's always with me." And I thought, what a nice idea is that? So I Googled again and found a place in, No. This was in Oregon. And so I contacted them and they had a website and this was one of the things that was there that I could use. So I don't know, it just seemed appropriate to me and I had, you could choose the colors you wanted and this was kind of like flame kind of colors. And Julie had another choice and she made a votive holder. So, yeah. Thank you. I forgot about that.
Thank you to Mary. Thank you everyone for coming today.
Big thank you to Bright View for hosting this for us. The Bright View Kitchen has made us something cold to drink and some cheese and crackers and fruit. So, yes. The books will be for sale if anybody wants to buy them. They're $16.99. And Katie, Steve's wife, is going to be helping me with that. What am I forgetting? Okay. So Travis is going to be taking some family pictures. So before we get to the books and. So Julie was saying if everyone in our family could come forward, we could get signatures before Travis is to the door.
Thank you.